Well, hey folks, it's Amy from Colorado Mountain Living. I wanted to do a quick check today on the beehive to see if the honey is ready to harvest. It was about last weekend when it was looking really good, and I was giving them a few more days to sort of cap off the honey, but I'm thinking that for our purposes, I'm not going to worry about if it's fully capped or not, because we're not selling it or anything. It's just for personal use. So I don't think the honey's going to spoil. I don't think we're going to have to worry about honey spoiling in our household if we just have a couple of jars. So mostly I was just curious on sampling the honey. So I'm going to take a look in and see what it looks like. Now most of the time I get really, a lot of times I get suited up for a lot of work inside the hive, but I'm just doing a quick check, and so I'm not going to worry too much about wearing a bee suit right now. Usually really pleasant weather like this, and there's plenty of nectar in nature, and for the bees, they really are super calm, and they don't really mind if I'm in the hive too much. There's a lot of drones on this frame. Is like all drones. Very interesting. All boys on this one. So what I'm doing is just kind of taking another quick look at all the frames. Took a little sniff there, see if I could smell any wildflower honey, but I'm just trying to see which ones are the best ones for the taking. I want to find the ones that have the most cappings, that are pretty much filled out as much as they could possibly be with semi-capped honey. No, there weren't any frames that were totally fully capped, so I was just gonna deal with that. I think right now it's not a really big concern to have completely capped honey because I'm not selling it, and it's just for our own household use. So just looking and double check and make sure I'm getting the frames that I want to get. All right, so what I saw was it's kind of the same situation as last weekend. There's a bunch of half-capped frames, so they haven't really made a lot of progress capping out more honey frames. But I don't think that's gonna impede being able to harvest. So what I need to do, and then like the whole super's full, so they have a lot of honey in there, so I don't feel bad about taking 5 or 6 frames. Because they still have plenty of time to build up more. So what I'm going to do is get this product that drives the bees down into the bottom part of the hive. It's kind of like a stinky smell I don't like. So I'll put it on a rag and put it up there for about 30 minutes. And that kind of drives the bees down. It kind of aggravates them a little bit, so I'll probably suit up for that part when I go to take the frames out. Because I don't want to have to... The thing about harvesting honey is that it's a lot easier when there aren't a ton of bees all over the frames of honey, right? You want them to be bee-free. Then you can just kind of throw them in a box and then carry them in the house. But if you just to brush them off, it's a hassle unless you make sure most of the bees are off of it. So I'm gonna get that product and put it on and then come back and get a few frames of honey. We'll do some honey harvesting today. All right, so I found the product that it's been in storage for a while. It's called Natural Honey Harvester, and there's a couple different fumes, I would say, what you call them, honey harvesters. It puts a scent into the hive that the bees don't like. This one actually smells pretty decent, like almonds, and it just seems to be a scent that bees really don't like. But there's also another brand out there that smells like rotten feet. So I've used it before, but I can't stand the smell. If you get one drop, like in your garage, it smells up the whole garage. So I'm switching to this one. I don't actually think I've used it yet. So I'm going to spray a bunch of this on a microfiber cloth and then put that on the top layer of the supers with the cover on for about 5 or 10 minutes. And then hopefully that drives the bees down. I used to have a special inner cover. It was called a fume board. It was basically just like a cover for the beehive that had felt in the lining, and you could use that as a special honey harvester. But I've done the rag method before and it works fine. I think I just had sold off some bee equipment at one point and I got rid of that. So I'm going to use this microfiber cloth, spray a bunch of this on, and then my favorite tool for harvesting the honey, you got to think about where you're going to put it, how you're going to carry it back to the house. A cooler works really, really well, like a big rectangle cooler with a lid, and you can fit quite a few frames in there. But ours got a hole in it, so I threw it away. We don't have one that size anymore. So what I do still have is this nuke box from when I got the beehives, hive number 2 last summer. So I saved it, and it has like a folding lid, and you can safely put about 5 or 6 frames inside. I think just 5 fit in here. So at least I'll have a way to carry them away from the hive. I don't think I'm going to take more than 5 frames today. I think that's plenty for our first initial harvest. We'll see how the rest of the summer goes. But anyway, so let's go give it a try. All right, back at the hives now. I'm going in with my equipment. The bees, I think, know I'm up to something because I left the cover off. So, in case the smell really irritates them, I'm suiting up, because irritated bees like to show you what's what. Actually, I feel like I need the suit more for the flies. The flies bite, and they're annoying. The other thing I don't like about a suit is you can't see what you're doing half the time. It puts like a layer of gray in front of you because of the screen, and you can barely see what's going on. It's also about to rain, so I want to get this done before it rains. Do my spraying over here. It's about 15 to 20. Sprays, they said. It smells just like almond extract. Instantly, the bees are like zzz. You can hear it. They hate it. They hate the smell. So I'm going to put the lid on. Cover. It's going to trap the smell. So I'm going to hang out for about 5 minutes. So to me, yeah, the smell doesn't smell bad at all. It smells like when you're making almond cookies, so it has that almondy smell. So it's much more pleasant than the other stuff that smells like stinky feet. That stuff is so disgusting, but it works really well. Who knew? So I'm gonna turn the camera off while I wait. The bees are kind of coming out the entrance to get some fresh air. You can see a bunch of them kind of crawling up the top of the hive because I just think they don't like that smell at all. This hive's always super busy. You can see all the cloud of bees around the entrance. I think they just have higher numbers in general. So got a little bit of a traffic jam here while I harvest some honey and get those fumes out of the hive. A few more minutes. All right, it's been a few minutes, so I'm gonna look and see. Nope. They're trying to escape out of the top. And the thunder's rolling in, so it's just like a great moment. It better not start raining right now. I hope I had 10 minutes. A lot of them are just trying to fly out, so. Actually, even though there's a lot of bees up top, they have cleared off the frames. So I think I'm going to try to pull out some frames if I can get the bees out of the way. You're just like, what stinks? This is where having a brush would be handy, but I actually forgot to grab my brush, so I'm gonna use some grass. One frame down. All right, I'm just gonna stick with 4 frames for now. I mean, I could grab another one, but there's not too many with any kind of capping, so I feel like the majority that were really, really full with honey I grabbed already. All right, so I'm gonna close this back up. Hopefully that can air out some, because the bees are definitely like freaking out right now. I feel bad. See how many bees are outside the hive right now. Hopefully they make it back inside or it airs out before all this rain gets here. Maybe that'll drive them back inside. But yeah, just those fumes. It's one of those things that is not too appealing to the bees. All right, so here we are in the kitchen. Got our 4 frames of honey and the little bowl. So, you know, normally you can do a lot of different ways for extracting honey. Because we only have 4 frames today, I'm just gonna crush it and strain it through a sieve. Because I have done the extractor before, and it's super efficient. But it's great when you have, you know, a dozen or more frames to go through. But with just 4, it's just about as easy and time efficient just to cut it out and then squash all of the honeycomb and just put it through a sieve. So that's how I'm going to do this one. I do have an electric uncapping knife, but because I'm just crushing it all, I'm not going to really use it. It is helpful to have your knife really hot, so I'm actually going to try to heat this up a little bit before I start slicing through the beeswax and the honeycomb. It just makes the slices go really smoothly. And then, so I've got one mixing bowl, and the other thing I need to get is I use a paint strainer. I think a paint strainer is really helpful for like a 5-gallon bucket paint strainer, and you can put all of your honeycomb into that and squish it and just keep squishing it, and then it kind of drains through that paint strainer. So actually I need to go find that right now because I think it's in the kitchen supplies. So that's my strategies for doing a small scale honey extraction, and it works pretty well. So I'm going to do this in 2 stages. What I'm going to do first is cut out the honeycomb and put it in the bowl. Just cut out big chunks of it out of the frames and put it right in the bowl. And then I'll get the frames out of the way, because once you start cutting into the honeycomb, honey goes everywhere. So it's just nice to have one flat surface. I put some silicone down to catch the majority of the honey dripping. You know, we'll see if that does anything or not, but trying to mitigate some of the honey spill. But I'm going to cut that out into big chunks, and then I'm going to be crushing up chunks in this paint strainer. So I buy these paint strainers for the express use of crushing and straining honey when I do it by hand like this. So it's just this one is a 1-gallon regular top paint strainer. So I can't really tell you what the mesh is, but just your typical paint strainer. And that does a really good job because you can actually get your hands right around that comb and really push it through. Now this way you do end up getting more of wax and propolis as you apply force to get it through. I don't actually see any pollen in these frames, so I'm probably going to minimize the pollen impact. Sometimes that can add more flavor to your honey, but I think this is just pretty much straight honey and uncapped honey. But with 4 frames, I don't really anticipate this honey lasting very long in our household. 6 months, that would be a great guess. I'll probably give away some as well to some friends up here. But anyway, let's get going. And I'm gonna try to heat up this knife on the stove here just to kind of get like a hot blade tip. Might have to have a glove on to be able to hold it, but that's gonna help me slice through. Because actually these frames are wired, so I'm gonna have to kind of cut around the wires. I don't want to break the wires, but I'm gonna cut around each wire, cut out rectangles, and then I'll put these frames back in the hive. Okay, heated up my knife a little bit, so let's see how we go. Oh, this one's a plastic frame, so this one's going to be a little bit trickier. So if you're not familiar with beekeeping and the supplies that we use, a plastic frame foundation is just that. It has a thick layer of plastic as the base for the bees to build their honeycomb off of, so it stays on there. It makes the frame itself a lot more durable and stable, especially if you're doing something like a centrifugal extraction where you're spinning your honey out. It makes it a lot more durable, and you can reuse these frames over and over. So I'm using a knife here to kind of cut away the honeycomb, but probably a better tool in this instance would be like a metal spatula, and you could just really scrape down the honeycomb right off the plastic, slide it right off there. So I was taking a little bit of extra time with a knife trying to cut it, but I'd say probably your best bet to use a metal spatula, and we'll probably switch to that on the next side. Okay, everybody get in, try to sample it. See what you think.
Good, I guess they're from there.
On the frame's good.
Amazing.
Woo!
There you go.
I can taste the flowers. I feel like I can taste
more
them.
on this side?
Yeah, I haven't scraped that side yet.
More? Oh, this guy.
Very, very light.
Yeah, it's super light.
Look at that, just dripping out.
Oh, it just folds over.
Yeah, it's pretty easy when you got the plastic foundation right there. You got plenty to press against. They don't quite build out the comb as thick, so you don't get your full 5.
It's the size one.
It's like telescoped out.
Is it like heaven in your mouth?
Dude, none of my cool shit. Yeah. When he was cutting it down, the honeycomb collapsed.
Uh-huh.
And then when he picked it up to grab a piece, it stretched back out
Oh, wow.
like an accordion.
Okay, we just did one plastic frame. Now we're going to try cutting foundation frames, solid beeswax, but it's wired, so I'm going to have to cut these out in rectangles. So, interestingly, there's not a lot of nectar on this side, but that's okay. So I guess I'll just start on the edge. Looking for the wire and just running it along the wire. All right, one. So this is what we got so far. A bowl full of honeycomb. Woo! Now we got to strain it out in this paint strainer and then put it into jars. This part's just as fun. All right, got a couple jars ready. These are some quart mason jars. I'm not sure how much honey this is going to make. I don't think it's going to be much more than 2 or 3 quarts, but I'll start with these. So what I do is just plop in pieces of the honeycomb into the paint strainer. This is the crush and strain method. This is really funny, and this is also how you get lots of honey all over your hands. So you basically just squish it up, aim it. So can you tell I didn't really think it through with the small mouth mason jars before I started crushing the honey. Normally, now that I remember, I normally crush it into a bowl and then I jar it. So I think I was just confused because I had the bowl full of honeycombs. So so I'm just going to switch up my technique here and just crush the rest of it into the bowl itself and then do the pour and strain from the bowl into the jars.
Okay, so that's the first couple pieces. And then you're gonna have this core of wax residue. So I take this out and then put this into a bowl over here. This is sort of my discard pile. And this you can still use for other things, so we can talk about that after.
So modifying my technique here, I'm going to crush and strain the rest of the honeycomb directly into the bowl. And then it'll fill up more with honey as the honeycomb presses out, and I'll throw the discard wax into the other bowl. Just going to crush it right into the big bowl here. A lot easier when you have a bigger bowl to catch everything. But there's no getting around it. I mean, honey gets everywhere. It's completely all over your hands. I had to go to the sink and wash my hands so many times during this, or otherwise it gets up into your elbows. So it's definitely a day where everything gets covered in honey. It can be kind of fun, but it definitely gets everywhere, so be prepared for that.
All right, so I got most of it strained out into the big bowl here, but what we've got is still a lot of little chunks of honey, and I'm going to go ahead and strain it into the rest of the mason jar. It was a little too cumbersome going directly into the jar, especially since it was a narrow mouth jar, so I'm going to just dump it into a little strainer on top of that, and then we will get our jars filled.
So I'm just using a regular kitchen sieve over a funnel to kind of solve my small mouth mason jar problem. And you'd think it would take forever for honey to filter through, but actually it goes pretty quickly. And it filters out all of those little wax cappings and little chunks of beeswax. So that's the only thing I'm really filtering out here because I already crushed it all. And a lot of pieces had broken off into the bowl. So we're just getting that very last few pieces of wax from getting into the jar. Time-wise, this process actually was a lot quicker than the crushing of the honeycomb. I probably filled my jars in less than 20 minutes, probably even closer to like 15 minutes. So it didn't take very long at all. And it was a lot more helpful to have a funnel to help catch everything into the jars.
Well, guys, here we are, the aftermath of the honey harvest. So we got 2 quart size and then 2 pint size mason jars out of the 4 frames. So not bad at all. It's a great amount of honey. It was very exciting to taste it, for the first time. This is literally the first time that I've even tasted the honey that the bees have been putting in their hives because I haven't harvested the last couple of years. Just kind of left it for the bees because they were only putting up maybe a frame or 2, nothing in the supers. But this year, that hive 1, they really were strong enough where they had the numbers, we had the right conditions, weather-wise, all this rain, tons of wildflowers. So we definitely was a honey year for us, although a lot of beekeepers probably wouldn't consider 4 jars of honey to be very much at all for a harvest, but for us, it's I think it's pretty incredible, and that's just with one hive. If our second hive had done better, we could have had twice as much. And also, I'm just keeping an eye on the season because it's not over yet. We just got a huge thunderstorm this afternoon come through, and we've got more wildflowers going. Things aren't drying up just yet, so we definitely have maybe a little bit more of the season to go. It's hard to determine. I'm still trying to figure out when the nectar flow is in the mountains. So it's probably still ongoing. So I'm going to keep an eye on it. I'm going to put those empty frames back in the hive tomorrow, and the bees can clean up all of this mess. I did want to show you about the, this is the leftover beeswax that, was inside of the paint strainer that I was squeezing the honey out of. So eventually what I'm going to do is put this outside kind of near the hives, but not too close to create a robbing situation. But I want to put it down there so the bees they will take away, they'll bury through this and take out all the remaining honey. And so what will be left will just be dry beeswax. And then what I can do is take that beeswax and then render it down to like a beeswax block. But you'll be, I mean, it doesn't look like it's much because it's kind of dry, but there's still quite a bit of a honey in here. It's pretty heavy, and there's probably, you know, who knows, maybe another half a pound of honey still in all of this beeswax. So the bees are excellent at just digging through and, you know, extracting all that wax. So I'll have them do the cleanup on this wax before I do the rendering of it into beeswax. But very excited to share this moment with you guys. I think, you know, been talking bees for a while now, and finally it's kind of like that moment where beekeepers have, you know, they put in all that work and they look forward to that honey harvest. And I kept it definitely moderate because I want them to succeed. So I'm not going to take all the honey out of their hives. It's not my intention. Just one little sampling, and 4 frames is plenty. So I'm going to put those empty frames back, and who knows, they might have a chance to build it back up again. And then, you know, once September comes around, we'll be doing feedings again for getting ready for fall and winter. So that's the scoop on the honey harvest for this year, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.